Well, good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. Didn't realize that we were already live. What is today? It is Tuesday, and I am Ben, and this is Sandy Bottom Homestead, and we are glad you're here with us. Last week did a live, just kind of impromptu, and everybody said that this week they wanted to talk about managing heat in the garden. So, kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time doing that. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about that, and then we'll go into answering questions. And then if you guys have questions, by all means, go ahead, fire away in the chats as needed. Let me get that set up. There we go. So I'm on a different platform today, so hopefully it'll go smoother than it did before. But before we start, is anybody dealing with like intense heat in their garden? And when I say intense heat, what is intense to you? Because I think that's a big thing that we have to consider for our gardens is what is intense and what is planted that is considered intense. So, and also, can you hear me okay? Because I've got a new mic going on here. I had some people say they couldn't hear me well last time. So if somebody could let me know in the comments if you can hear me, that'd be great. Okay, nobody wants to comment? Awesome. So I'm going to assume that you can hear me just fine. Okay, thank you, Crockett. Crockett can hear me, so that means everybody else can. So it's summertime. We're getting into, about the hottest month of the year for some. Some people, it may be starting to cool down a little bit. But I'm sorry, I need to focus. I'm looking at you guys and looking at the chats as they come in, so I need to chill. But so the heat, 90 plus degrees, 95 plus is hot for some vegetables, and it's too hot for other vegetables. And then you've got some like 80 to 85 is perfect for some, and it's too hot for others. And so what we're referring to here is fall crops, cool season crops. You want to keep them lower on that end, 85, 80, 75 degrees would be great. And then stuff like tomatoes, squash, peppers, corn, pumpkins, watermelons, and stuff like that, they can clearly take a hotter heat. So you got to look into what's in your garden and figure out what's going to work for you in your garden and what you're growing. It's not, a lot of times I feel like people are looking for a one size fits all approach as far as like heat management or cold management in the garden, for instance, all that stuff. And it doesn't really work that way. There's not always a one size fits all approach. So we got to take it step by step. Anybody, I see there's some people coming in now. Is anybody doing anything for heat protection in their garden now? Let us know in the chat if you don't mind, because that will help drive the way we're going. I'm not as interested about the people that are coming after. I'm more interested in the people that are here now. So if there's anything that you guys need, by all means. And if you're watching this in the future, you should come and then we can include you. But and if you've never added heat protection, you could be very surprised on what it could do. I've said this in a lot of the videos, and I've said this in the Backyard Gardens podcast. I don't typically use heat protection until I start to plant for fall. With the drought that we had earlier this year, which we seem to be making a dent in, I was just about to start adding it to help, not with heat protection per se, but water retention. So a lot of these things can go hand in hand, which is a great thing about gardening. It's kind of, you can do a couple things and take care of a couple problems. But that's what I've been working with for us. So what I usually do is, you can always add shade. A lot of people, when you hear the word shade, it's not a solid tarp that blocks out all the sun. That's not really what we want to do, because you're going to take away that precious sunlight. So yeah, Crockett, before I get into that, said he couldn't get the squash seeds to germinate, but they once the temps cooled down. And so that's an exact reason why you'd want to use shade, like I'm doing in the parsnips bed. I believe that video aired Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's what I use to get those to germinate, is to keep that temperature cooler, because some seeds are sensitive to temperature before they will germinate. They don't need to be as hot as you can get. It's like when we start our seeds inside and we use heat mats sometimes. Well, some stuff we don't need to use heat mats. And that's something that, I've been trying to say on my channel, and I'll continue to say when it's starting to be the season again, is don't start everything on the heat mat, because not everything needs to be hot. For instance, spinach won't germinate if it's above, I can't remember, but if it's too high, it will not germinate. Same with carrots, they will not germinate. But that being said, the temperature outside is not the soil temperature, the temperature in the soil. Y'all follow what I'm saying on that? Because that's an important thing to remember, is just because it's 95 outside, that doesn't mean that the soil underneath is 95. It's going to be lower because it's buried. And then you've watered it. You've got the mulch on it. You've got shade on it. You've got, all these different things that you can do. So you've got to think about that when you're moving forward in your gardens. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. And I'm doing well, Homestead Imaginations. I hope you are as well. So when we do the shade, we use a shade cloth, and it comes in percentages. Now, the tricky part is some people label it as how the percentage of sun that goes in, and some people label it as the percentage that the sun blocks. So 10%, 40%, 50, 90, whatever. The only one that you can guarantee would be a 0% or 100%. So when you're buying shade cloth, try and look and see what you're ordering. Are you getting a 50 or 40% sun coming through, or 40% blockage? Am I saying that right? Yeah. So we want to make sure. I usually try to go with everything that says how much sun is coming through. And so in my garden, I like to use 60% shade cloth. It's a good across the board. It's a little bit more than half. It goes in. I think I have some 70% as well. So 70% of the sunlight comes through, and that does help to cool the plant down. So you can talk about germination. You can talk about seed starting. You can talk about full-grown plants. It doesn't matter. It'll start to lower that temperature, and that's what we want to do. So the leaf temperature will be cooler. It can help with sun scald. It can help with, overheating those vegetables. It takes the pressure off so that they don't bolt if they're really prone to bolting. So you can do stuff like that. Has anybody done anything like that for like the plants that they're using now? I know, interestingly enough, I have a lot of people that follow me from Arizona, it seems like, and you guys have to live by a shade cloth. It's hot. So I know that, but in other areas like that, are using it on like full grown plants? Are you more interested in using it for like seed starting, younger plants that are coming up from germination? I know there's a delay in the chat, so I'll keep going until I see something come up. So, okay, so Homestead Imaginations, your arugula bolted very quickly this year. Where are you located? What state are you in? Yeah, it's, and it's one of those things in the spring. So a lot of people don't realize that you can use shade in the spring as well. And you can use it very effectively, because a lot of times what we're doing is we're not really trying to lower the temperature a lot. You're just trying to lower it a little bit. And you're also trying to avoid wild temperature swings. So that's really important too. And for some of these like really bolt sensitive crops, but for this time of year, it's about keeping them cool so that you don't get flower drop, you don't get fruit drop, especially, because both of those things can occur. If the plant gets overheated or overly stressed, it can drop the flowers and the fruit. So that being said, what you want to do is you want to employ this method of, and we're just starting with shade right now, and then that will help lower the temperatures all around it, and then that will go through and help relieve that pressure. So as the sun hits the hottest part of the day, it will be it won't be as harsh on it, and as the sun goes down and the temperatures are naturally cooling, it will help with that. Yeah, so and that's exactly imagination is exactly when you would want to throw out a shade cloth. So they got if you watch this in the future, they had a heat wave in the spring of 90 degrees for 2 weeks. That's going to make anything bolt in the spring, essentially. And so when you see that coming, you can go ahead and put that on there and it will help with that. So the shade will definitely do that. The other thing you can do is mulching. So mulching is, there's a lot of things that mulch can do. I talk about this a lot in all the platforms as well. But what it does is, not only does it, like, if you've got a lot of mulch in your garden right now, when we're done here and it's sunny out, go out there, put your one hand on top of the mulch and then slide your hand underneath under the soil and feel the temperature difference. It's a dramatic difference. And what's causing the stress on the plants, not necessarily the leaf temperature, but it's the soil temperature on the roots. So the roots are getting overheated as well. So, hey, Bob, how's it going? Or Bub, excuse me. Yep. So you can use shade cloth to harden off plants before you transplant them too. I mean, because that's essentially, and that's a really good way, is instead of doing like putting it in full shade and working its way out, you can always just add shade cloth too. But lowering that temperature on the soil makes a difference, because what I've learned over the years, and this is just from me witnessing, when you go pull up a plant at the end of the year, you're going to go pull up your tomato plants. Take a look and see how deep those roots really go. And if you got a lot of mulch right now, brush the mulch aside and then scratch away the dirt, and you'll see that there's not a lot of roots going deep like people think. I used to think that you put a plant in the ground and then it's just going to drill down as deep as it can go looking for water. I have not experienced that. What I've experienced is my beds, I think I use either 2x8s or 2x10s for my raised beds, and those plants do not hit the bottom of those. If let's just say they're 2x8s, they don't hit the bottom of that 8-inch board, so they're really within this much space, which is probably about 4 inches, 4 to 5 inches, and then they start to spread out and they start feeding out roots, and so those higher roots are getting cooked. And then it causes it to it causes to die off on the roots, which means to die off on the plant because it can't feed it. Yeah, adding mulch makes a big difference, and it does a lot of different things too. So again, it does the two things we're talking about, but then it adds nutrients back over time. And so you can see that now. You're probably looking in my garden now. I know you guys have seen some of the videos, and it's like there's not a lot of mulch in your garden. Well, what happened was, for the peppers, essentially, is they got so packed in there, I didn't get the mulch in time, so I couldn't without damaging the plants. So with the high heat that we had and the drought, we had some die off. So once I get off my butt and I get out there and I clear it out, I can go back and put it in, and you're going to see a change in that. The same for the corn. Like, we went out there and we added mulch on top, and we saw a change in the growth of the corn. It's made a big difference. Hello, Kathy from Kentucky. Nice to see you here. So mulch is another good thing that you can do. Overall, it will lower the temperatures across the board. So we've got a two-layered approach at this point. You've got your leaf temperature being lowered, which is also going to lower the surface temperature. And then you've got your mulch, which is going to lower the surface temperature and then the ground temperature on top of that. So you've got these multiple layers. Now you start getting into, what else can we do? It's too hot. It's just too hot, and you're worried about it. So there's a method that they use in greenhouses. Good morning, Dennis. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, 100 degrees at 11 a.m. This is just for you. So in greenhouses, what they'll do is they'll go in the middle of the day and they will water down all the plants. They just water down all the surface, all the plants and everything. And then as that water starts to evaporate, it will in turn cool down the surface of the plants even more. But what else is that doing? It's lowering that soil temperature even further. I mean, how many of us have gone out on a hot day, worked in the garden, and been like, it's so miserable. You turn the hose on, pour it on your head, and you're like, oh, it feels so good. I love it. It's the same idea. It's just cooling it down even more. So you've got all these different methods working together. And it's not, like I said, it's not a one size fit all, though. Because if you're already going into spring, into your fall crops, then you might want to take a different method. You may not be able to mulch as deep. You may have to put more shade on top. You may have to water more in order to do it. So, we were just saying there's an episode coming out for the Backyard Gardens podcast. I don't know when it's coming up, but we were talking about it. And it was like, these fall crops are very, very water hungry. And so you've got to really feed them the water. And then that will that will help lower that temperature as well. Kathy, is it hot in your area? Is it real? Because if it's real hot, that's exactly what we're talking about, where the buds will just fall off the plant. And it's a survival mechanism. So it's going to create the buds, and it's like, oh no, too hot, can't handle it, and then it's going to drop the buds, and then it just helps it, to live, because that plant doesn't care about feeding you. That plant just cares about carrying its genetics on to the next year, and so on and so forth. So that's what we really have to remember, is what is the purpose of a plant? It's not to feed us. It's the genetics. Hey, Ash, I remember you from last time. Yeah, in a greenhouse this time of year, unless you've got a cooling system. I mean, I showed you guys recently what's going on in my greenhouse. Like, I just leave it. Like, it's way too hot in there. I've got a tomato in there. You saw it. It's, I don't know, 7 feet tall. Not a single fruit's come off of it, and it's just because it's too hot. I think I checked the temperature the other day. It's like 115 in there. You can't do anything with that. So you got to cool it off. And the only way to cool off in a greenhouse is to have a cooling system. Super amounts of airflow will definitely help. And what I wanted to do to my greenhouse is I wanted to remove the panels during the summer, especially on the roof, because that would allow the rain to come in as well. But that's part of the structure to hold it together. So I couldn't do that. So I just had to abandon it and then just say, like, hey, I'm going to focus on this in the wintertime, in the fall, winter, and then early spring. So I get a good use out of it. But in the summertime, you just walk away. And you couldn't put a gun to my head to get me to go sit in that greenhouse and work. Would watermelons and be too much in a greenhouse? Would it be too hot? You start getting into those higher temperatures like a greenhouse can produce. Yeah, I think that you're really going to have problems with just about anything in there. Again, you have to have a lot of airflow, and you've got to bring that temperature down. I don't know in your area, like if it's 85 degrees outside and the sun's hitting the greenhouse, it's easily going to be 95 to 100 degrees in there, easily. I know, like, for instance, in the wintertime, it'll be 40 degrees outside. It'll be 75 degrees in the greenhouse. I don't have my sensor in right now in the greenhouse, so I can't check it. But I took it out for that shade house thing, which that video is coming out Thursday. So it's interesting, but I've checked it periodically, and it seems like in my greenhouse there is a peak temperature that it can get, which is about 115 to 118 degrees, is about as hot as it can get that I can see. If we get some crazy heat, I'll be putting the sensor back out there to see. No, Bub, in my greenhouse, I don't have, the only thing I do is I have the vent up top that opens up. So, hot air rises. And so it'll gently, if you don't have anything helping it, it just kind of wafts out. I leave the door open to create a cross breeze. And then I have a little solar fan. I mean, when I say little, I mean little. that's mounted up at that top window to blow the air out. So it's blowing that hot air out. And then down low, I have a louver window that opens and closes that can help bring in more. So the idea is that the fan's here, the window's here, it will pull the air through and then from the door out. And it still doesn't lower. I've been kind of upset with how how inefficient it is at lowering the temperature. If you have Ash, if you have the same greenhouse as me, I would not cut anything on that greenhouse. They are engineered for stability with the way they are. I've thought about doing a lot of things too, and I don't I don't recommend it. They sell other products, and my greenhouses across the board, they're all the same. They're just a different name, straight up. There's no difference in any of them. They all are just different, different names. You can find different things to help with that. And the best thing is the bigger the fan, the bigger the airflow. I mean, I've gone into greenhouses that are pretty big, but the fans are almost as big as this room. And they're just constantly pulling in air, venting it. So, yeah, Kathy, if you've had a really hot summer, I mean, this is part of the summer. This is why the summer can be a very, very hard time to grow. Um, I'm not going to get into like global warming and stuff like that. It's just whatever. Summer's always been hot, and the hotter it gets, and the crazier the weather gets, it's just something that we have to manage. And so these are just tools for our toolbox. So, employing shade like that. If you start getting those hot days in the upper 90s, and you start and it's dry, I would definitely be adding shade to it. Yeah, bub. I get every time I do a video about my greenhouse, I get all kinds of suggestions and comments, and I feel really bad sometimes, but I tell people like I'm not interested in doing anything else to my greenhouse. I have it set the way I want, and I've learned that I can grow in this area the way that I do without changing anything. So I know that I can grow in the wintertime, and I can grow certain things in the wintertime, and I'm okay with that. But I also know that I can't grow in the summertime anything, and I'm okay with that too. And it's just how much time and money do I want to put into this greenhouse? And the answer to that is not much. Not much more than growing in it. I've done what I want to do. So the other hidden thing about the heat and the stress that it gives plants, um, you have to remember that when it gets really hot like this and it starts to stress the plants, they're weakened. And so Kathy here made a comment that her cucumbers have been attacked and are dying. Well, that's what a weakened plant, what will happen to a weakened plant. They can't fend off pest attacks and stuff like that, which is where we step in and try to help with that, via treatments and pesticides, whatever you want to use, organic, inorganic, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Ash. It doesn't matter. So last year in my greenhouse, I did have I've done a shade cloth in my greenhouse two ways. I did a greenhouse inside the first year, and then I read like, hey, that's not good. It can trap heat. So then I took it and I added the shade cloth to the top of the greenhouse so that it would go, so that the heat would never even get to it. Made no difference. Zero difference. Same temperature, hot as hell. I mean, basically, you know what I mean? It's terribly hot. So yeah, it doesn't matter what I do to my greenhouse. I cannot cool it any more than anything else. So I just have to let it go. All right, y'all got any questions? Because that's the gist of cooling a plant. It's all about managing it after that. One of the things, whenever I say wetting down and you water in the middle of the day and you spray the leaves, I get a lot of people that's have the old adage of like, you don't want to do that because the sun will magnify the water and burn the leaves. Is there anybody here that kind of follow that train of thought here? And the reason why I say that is because it doesn't happen. You get a sun shower in the middle of the day, you look up, the trees don't have holes in them. It doesn't happen. So it's okay as far as wetting down to water in the middle of the day. It's okay to water in the middle of the day in an emergency, like, oh no, things are really dry, I've got to get them some water. But you're going to get a lot of evaporation and you're not really using the water efficiently. So that's why it's not really recommended. And I don't know if the old adage of like, hey, it's going to burn the hole in the plant, I don't know if that was something to scare people away from wasting water, which crazier things have been said to do least crazy things. So, but it's okay to water your plants in the middle of the day. I will die on top of a mountain telling people that, because the last thing we should be doing is watching our plants wilt or struggle from heat and being like, I need to water them, but I'm going to wait a couple hours. And to be honest, that couple hours could be the end of the plant. So just remember that. Yeah. So they can absorb heat, but they cool at the same time and they'll release heat. So, and I mean, when it's hot, that stuff does not stay wet long. It's surprising how fast water will evaporate off of a plant and turn into your garden. So, it's crazy how much of a difference it makes. So has anybody done any kind of heat management of any kind, or even noticed that something they're doing is cooling their plants down? Like I said about like sliding your hand under the mulch. Like I really it's a really good exercise to do because you can completely feel the difference. I did it last year. I think I did it on video. And I slid my hand underneath and noticeably cooler underneath. And then I turned the water on after that, and it was even cooler once the water got into it. So, you can imagine how much difference that's going to make for your plant. Because the goal is not to survive, it's to thrive, right? That's what we want our gardens to do. We want them to thrive through these time periods. Another aspect of heat management is simply varieties. Kathy, you have all raised beds and you need to do irrigation for next year. I recommend that. I moved to the in-ground system that I used, and I really do enjoy it. It's more difficult to direct sow, but it works great. But going into varieties, so you see like heat tolerant varieties, bolt resistant, high heat resistant. Like this stuff it just doesn't really do what it's advertised to do. I've never experienced that. And where I live in coastal North Carolina, it's not crazy hot, but it's not crazy cold either. We get really in between, and we can get very hot in the summertime. But you look at like Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California, these places get hotter than us. And what I'm saying is I've used these high heat, heat resistant varieties, and I haven't noticed any difference. I don't think it makes a difference. I'm reading comments here. Yeah, Homestead Imaginations, you'll be surprised. Definitely give it a shot. Especially like on the weekend, go out there at like high noon and try it. It's a shocker. So yeah, Ash does a very good she passively plants non-heat loving plants in shady areas. And that's a great thing to do. Coming into the fall, lettuce can be planted. Lettuce doesn't need 6 hours of sun. I don't know if you guys realize that. Lettuce can totally survive off of 4 hours of sunlight. So we can, it doesn't need 8 hours. So you can get it to there. You just got to plan for it, and you've got to understand one thing. And this is the subject that nobody wants to hear in the gardening space. We've noticed it on the podcast and on YouTube. Whenever we talk about like specifically this, like an episode or a video, lower views, lower listens, but it's so important. As the sun starts to get lower and lower in the winter, you're losing a minute a day right now. You'll get up to almost 2 minutes a day. So you're going to be losing hours of sunlight coming up. And as we get into the fall planting season, you got to take all that into account, right? So somebody in here was in New York. I can't remember who it was. You'll be able to plant earlier. You know what I mean? You'll be able to plant your fall garden earlier. For us here, I got to plant my fall garden later. So I'm battling the low sun, where some people up north are able to get the, plant in the higher sun times. And that's why these fall crops will grow better, because fall crops are nothing more than cool season crops. They'll grow better in the spring than they will the fall. So there's that. Yeah, Bub, I've had a couple people recommend kale. I think it's kaolin clay. Maybe, am I saying it right? I need to do some reading up on it. I haven't done anything as far as reading on that, but I've heard a lot of things, and it's good for a lot of different things in the garden, different issues, you could say. One thing in my garden that I really like to do is I like to have multi-purpose everything. Like mulch, multi-purpose, shade, multi-purpose, fertilizers, multi-purpose, multi-purpose trellises. And, I can use everything for different things because it cuts down on the amount of crap that I need. One thing about gardeners is we got a lot of BS floating around, trying to keep this. I'm not a very PG speaker in real life. I've spent a lot of time on ships and boats in my previous days. And so I cuss like a sailor. So it's really hard for me not to, but I try to keep it PG. But there's a lot of, we get a lot of stuff, and I try to like minimize it more and more. And as we've gotten into the beekeeping, we've gotten more and more crap, but it's necessity. So I try to have everything multi-purpose. And so that's something that I'm looking at too, is that kaolin clay. And I may be saying it wrong. I don't know. But that's how I'm going to say it. So yeah, heat tolerance. So I know you've seen on the channel, I'm growing the Seminole pumpkins. Haven't batted an eye yet on the heat. I'm growing the black-eyed peas. They haven't batted an eye in the heat. Sweet potatoes. The corn's actually doing good in the popcorn. I haven't pointed it out in the video, but we started to get more and more rain recently. We're getting a little bit of rain every night, which in turn, I don't know if you remember in another video, but I said about mid-July, we'll lose our tomatoes to disease. That's happening. So it's just because high humidity, rains at night. It's like a worst case scenario. So, but the corn is actually doing a lot better, but it's not batting an eye in the heat. And that's really important. So in some areas we may, and this is a downfall of the time that we live in, where we think we can do and plant whatever we want, wherever we want. But that is not the case at all. There are places that where you live, you should be focusing on other plants more so than stuff here, than I am. We shouldn't all have okra across the country. It's okay to grow some okra if you're way up north, but it may not do as well. I should not be trying to grow cabbage right now, where I know for a fact up north, you can grow cabbage throughout the whole summer and get your harvest like it's supposed to in the fall. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But you've got to recognize that that's what your garden wants and can accept, and what these plants will tolerate. And they just won't tolerate it here. So I have to, I've been trying to build my my repertoire of plants that will really thrive in the heat. Yeah, Stone, I feel you. What's a hula ho? You may be calling it something different than I do. So San Marzano's correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a determinate tomato, isn't it? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Well, thank you, Bub. Thank you for stopping in. Stone, if overwintering onions, go for it, dude. Go for it. I mean, I don't see the problem. Throw a little bit of shade over it, or not shade. Throw a little bit of cover over it when it gets really cold. What does that mean? Your lowest lows like 10 degrees, I believe 7A is. I don't see a problem with it. Start them early, get them in the ground, get them comfortable. Boom, you're off to the races. Oh, a scuffle hoe. I don't use a scuffle hoe. My soil is too soft. So what I use in that last video I showed you, that Warren hoe, I've gotten to where I exclusively use the Warren hoe now. I don't even use the other hoe broke, like the standard hoe. I use my $10 hoe all day long. I need to put, actually, I got it off Amazon. I need to put it on Amazon, my Amazon list, because it's really made a difference. Danlo says, my silver may... They got that. That's your dog, right? You got your cabbages? Yes, Stone, if you're starting your onions this week, just get them in there probably at least 6 weeks before your last frost. Yeah, Kathy, if you got trees that are blocking, like trimming them, it doesn't really do anything. But you got to think at this time of year, shading until 2 is a good thing, right? Because you're going to get that cooler temperatures. So it's kind of tough. One thing like I'm doing my wild garden is you just got to move it. I know you may not have space or something, but we figure it out. And we did an episode about this. And it's really like what we need to start doing is paying attention to our space. I get a lot of people that come to me and they say, hey, and in IRL, in real life, and they're like, hey, I want to start a garden, and I'm going to put it here. And I say, well, how much sun does it get? And I'll go by and I'm like, well, it doesn't get any sun. And so it's like, take time and watch the sun in your yard, see where it goes. I had a friend put a garden up and their yard gets sun all day. They put it in the shade of their house. So they got 2 hours of sun because of the way the house shaded their garden. That's a stupid problem to have, but it's still a problem. Yeah, Stone, I would put the onions in before the garlic. The garlic is a bulb that will grow. You're trying to get a plant. So you want the onions to get in, get comfortable. So I broke this down on the podcast episode that's releasing soon. I use 16 weeks for before your last frost date to start everything. And I know it's a little bit late, but the way you look at it is 8 weeks to grow it from seed, and then 8 weeks in the ground before your last frost, because that second 8 weeks is what it's going to take for those plants to form roots, to get comfortable, to get strong enough in the beds, in the ground, so that when the cold does come, they can survive. Onions are really hardy, though. So there is that. Okay, so that's heat. At this point, why don't we just, you can ask anything you want. I'll answer some questions. I don't really care. You can ask me whatever you want. If I don't want to answer it, I won't. But it's gardening or whatever related makes a big difference. So yeah, let's do that for a few minutes and see where we go from there. I see a lot of people are. It's funny. I didn't realize that onions were super popular in the garden. Nobody talks about them, but every time I talk about onions, I get a lot of questions about onions. So it's interesting. Hey, Regina from Midlands. Glad you made it today. And I grow short day intermediate day onions, usually short day. So I grow like the Valdelia type onion. And we're planting earlier this year than we have in the past. It's only my third year growing them. So I'm still tweaking my planting dates, trying to get it set to where I need. I'm going to put them. Where am I going to put them? Since I'm adding the wild garden, things are getting a little shaken up. I'm going to put them where my sweet potatoes are. So I've got roughly 6 weeks to get my onions ready to go into the garden. Yeah, Regina, onions are all about the sun length and how much green is on top of the soil. So a lot of people say give it a haircut. I trim my onions as they're growing in the pots. Once I put them in the ground, I do not trim them no matter what. Do not trim them. You just feed them and get that greenery to grow. And that's what's going to give you you need more energy to create a bulb. Yeah, Stone, it's difficult without knowing your temperatures. I don't know. I saw somebody ask you when your frost date was. Oh, close to Thanksgiving. What is your like designated last frost date? Well, hey there. I'm glad you made it. Isla? Did I say it right? Well, thanks, Dave. Glad you made it too. Small bulbs. Regina, when did you plant your onions? When did you put them into the ground? So if anybody's not clear, there's a first frost date and a last frost date for every area, and it's an average. And this average is across the range. It comes in multiple averages, but they usually give you like I can't remember. It's like 80% chance you get frost, 50%, 10%, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, it's hard to get all the different frost dates, but if you look, you'll get like an average first and last frost date for your area. And that's what we're looking for because that will kind of guide us where to go. For instance, my first frost date is, I believe it's November 11th. And last year it was, if I'm not mistaken, November 20th. So, it's an estimation, but it's a good number to go by. So, that date is your like cutoff date. Ayla. Got it. Hard A. Love it. Yeah, Regina, what kind of onion did you plant then? That's the other question. Ooh, Kelly. 3 foggy mornings in July, 90 days until first snow. Zone 7B. So yeah, October 24th is your cutoff. You need to have your plants in the ground for fall no later than September. I'd say 15th would be like what I would be comfortable with. And even before that. So this is where you're going to start using shade because I'm imagining it's still warm, stuff like that. The one thing to know about this, as I see a lot of zone talk coming up, and you guys know, I don't ever say what zone I'm in because it doesn't make a crap what zone it is. For instance, damn low music, if you're still here, what zone are you in? Did you plant, Regina? Did you get the sets or seeds, or did you get like the plant already made, or like the seedling? Okay, perfect. Dan Lowe is an 8B. I'm an 8B, right? My weather here is completely different than his weather, but we're in the same zone, same planting zone, right? But I know And I've talked to other gardeners that are in Seattle and all these other places, and they've said that their planting date for their summer crops aren't until June. Our planting date is in April because of the way we get heat. So it doesn't matter what zone you're in necessarily. It's very misleading. And that's why I hate talking about zones, because it does not matter at all for growing food. It's called a perennial zone map for a reason. It is for perennial flowers. It's not even, I mean, you could consider like eggplants and peppers and stuff perennials, but we all grow them as annuals, right? So it doesn't matter. But for instance, if you look at your zone and somebody on the other side of the country or in another area, it's totally different. So you'll start to see these things crop up, but it's stuff that you don't hear about because it's like it's it's like the gospel for planting. It's like, hey, what zone are you in? Oh, well, you can grow this. Well, that's not really true. I could be in zone 1 right now. I don't even know what low temperatures, but it doesn't even matter because all it has to do is dip low that one time, and then I'm automatically in zone 1. As long as that average gets down that low every year, at least once, that's where it's at. Well, thank you, Dave. That's very generous of you. Yeah, zone 8A. So Georgia is, and again, Georgia and North Carolina, we're very close geographically, and it's totally different. It's the heat that gets us. They need to make a damn heat map, not a freezing map. I don't give a crap about a freezing map when I'm growing food. I want to know about the heat because that's what's going to judge what I plant and how I plant it. So not before Mother's Day, which is, what is that? That's in May. So for me, we're done planting by May. So you can see the difference. And I really hate that people, hey Frosty, I hate that people are really into this zone thing. And it's another thing that I will die on a hill about. I will just swear that they don't matter. And people hate me for it across the board. I get hate mail and letters and everything else all the time. And I don't really care, because once we understand that your zone doesn't matter for growing food, you're starting to crack that code into unlocking what's good for your garden and what you can do. And so the unconventional thinking is what we like. Farmers don't care about what they're growing or what zone they're in. They care about the temperature in the growing season that they're in, right? It doesn't matter. And I can tell you, we got our zone up. We were 8A, now we're 8B. And this year I got as cold as 7B. A heat map would be so much better. And for people in the South, we're screaming for heat maps. For people in the North, they're screaming for frost maps. So, it's that whole thing. Yeah, it probably is a government asset spreading hate. Yeah, Dan Lowe, I will tell you, I looked into taking a master gardener course, just so I could, have the clout to say, like, hey, I'm a master gardener. And what I learned is the whole point of that course is to go out and teach. And then I went and talked to somebody, and they're like, I'm a master gardener. And we were talking, and 90% of what they said was wrong. Their garden was crap. They didn't know how to do anything. So I just kind of backed off and said, you know what? This is where I want to spend my time, because I'm helping more people here right now than as a master gardener I ever would. And I don't need a piece of paper to tell anybody that I know how to garden. All I need is this belly to show that, because I eat a lot of food. I eat a lot of healthy food, but I eat too much of it. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I need. Dave, you have a warmer summer and a cooler summer. I don't know what that means. I'll be honest. Yeah, Stone. And Frosty, that's good that you grow some food not meant for your area, because that's the benefit of being a gardener. We can do that. I do the same thing. But if you're really struggling hard in certain times, I think it's good to kind of say, hey, you know what? Let me take a step back this year and let me try something different and see how much more productive I can get. Because if I get productive, then that just makes it great. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, my garden this year, I'm gonna be talking about it a lot soon. What I've done in my garden this year, I'm not happy with the way things are progressing. It looks good, it's doing fine, but I'm not getting out of my garden what I want to get out of my garden. Oh, I got you, Dave. It's just it's a summer year round. Where are you at in particular? Exactly. So you're in 8B, I'm in 8B. I've got family in Houston, Texas. They, I believe, are in 8B. Maybe, yeah, they're in 8B. Most of Texas where people live is in 8B, 8A, 8B area. And it's totally different, completely different. And then you've got to factor in humidity on top of that, right? Like Arizona, I know y'all don't have a lot of humidity. I'd be getting a lot of humidity. I know Texas does. I know Florida does. Good night. It's hot. It's fire down there. Yeah, team crop dusters in late March. That sounds about right. You know, I learned a lot about this last year. I got the bright idea to do those custom seed starting schedules. This is not a commercial for it, but you're welcome to get one if you guys need one. But as I started building them and really researching the different areas, I learned a lot about our country and the growing seasons within our country and how intricate and complicated it can be. And I get why it's confusing for people and it's tough. So I understand totally. Yeah, Stone, I got mosquito. It's the mosquitoes are brutal. Ever since we had Hurricane Florence, we've never had small mosquitoes since. Yep, Kelly, 40% shade cloth sounds good. Anywhere from, I like, is that 40% blockage or 40% of the sun coming in? Which one is that labeled as? And Frosty, if you have that mindset of it's okay, then perfect. But the problem is a lot of people don't have that mindset and they want to grow a banana and then the banana doesn't make it and they're like, well, dang, and that's tough. And you can look, for instance, again, between me and Danlo, like I'm familiar with their 8B weather. That's why I keep bringing it up. Some things would do very well in 8B, but maybe not in his 8B because of the way the weather is. It could be totally different. So that's the problem that we have to work around. Yep, that sounds about right. And every time I send one of those, anybody that's in a really hot state, anytime I send one of those, one of those seed starting charts, I always put in there like adding shade makes a huge, huge difference. And so as you build out your gardens, you start thinking like, how am I going to add shade? And once you get more experience as a gardener, you start to build that into your psyche and you can automatically just do that more and more. And it works out really good because you're eliminating a lot of problems in the future. Yeah, rice is a high water crop. You know what I mean? We have rice that grows wild here in the water. It's in the waterway in the swamps. So not the swamps, it's in the backwater. So I mean, it's like, why would I grow that? Good. I'm glad it's working for you, Frosty. You had snow on Mother's Day. So 54 Cal. I have to admit, every time I see your name, I think you're in California. Now I know where you are. It's a little bit different. Well, and 40% blockage, 10 degrees. Yep. So we have to remember too, We just got out of an El Nino cycle and we're going back to a La Nina. So our winter was definitely weird because of that cycle. So that cycle, you know, it's the water temperatures in the Pacific that drive the weather across. And it made a big difference last year. So we didn't have a very cold winter either, but we had a cold snap. But our cold snap for us was a lot shorter than it usually is. I hope you get a watermelon too. I'm not going to get a watermelon. I don't think that wild garden really messed me up. I've got a friend up the road from me. They're growing oranges. Nobody grows oranges here, but they go out there and they wrap them in blankets and stuff in the wintertime, and they're willing to do that. I don't like doing that. You know, my nose itches like crazy. I'm sure y'all can tell. If I was to fertilize my melons, Dan Low, I'd fertilize them at planting, and then I'd fertilize them the next month, and then depending on their growth, I'd fertilize them again with low nitrogen fertilizer. You don't want to have a lot of leaves; you want to have fruits, so keep that in mind. Well, good luck with your second round of tomatoes. I did that last year, and we got tomatoes all the way up until the frost. That raccoon has just been getting me this year, so our tomatoes sucked. I found out that he was eating our green tomatoes, and I'd find them half eaten in different places in our yard. So he's got a target on his back now, unfortunately. Oh, I hope you get some serious watermelons off that. No, Danlo, fish fertilizer. I I don't really consider that super high nitrogen. What I mean by high nitrogen is like an unbalanced fertilizer, like blood meal or something like that. A fish fertilizer is more like a booster, so you can definitely use that. I just use granules. That's what I use. Frosty, what tomatoes are you growing? I do not have issues with kudzu bugs that I know of. To be honest, I'm not even sure what they are. Oh yeah, I don't have that nasty ass thing. Yeah. If you naturally have earthworms, Kelly, I wouldn't stress about it. You know, if you're worried about there being too many, just move them to another bed. The problem is that they're just going to go back. Now, are they earthworms or are they Asian jumping worms? That's the question. Asian jumping worms, when you rake the soil back, they'll be wiggling a lot on the surface. Just keep watering them, Regina. Once they go, they go. And if you really want to focus on one watermelon, take five of them off the vine and it'll redirect that energy to those watermelons to help them grow more. So you can try that as well. Early girl variety is a good one, Frosty. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't really like eating tomatoes too much, did you? Yeah, I think the exoskeletons are cool. Well, LGGG for raccoon, I'm got one option now. So, and it's not a sexy one, but unfortunately it has to be done. I wish we could coexist together, but I don't think we can. Um, I use solar lights, motion activated. I use the radio that I've showed you guys in the videos in my shed, and that's about it. I don't have a motion activated sprinkler, so I'm not really trying to do that. So just not into it's not my thing. And I'm readjusting my fertilizer that I'm using. So I'm steering more away from blood meal and fish stuff for right now, trying to get them to leave so I don't have to do the unthinkable. If your soil drains quickly, add compost, add mulch, stuff like that, Kelly, and that'll help. Hey, LP. That's okay. I'm used to people lurking in the bushes. It's cool. I do the same thing. I never go to a live and talk. So there you go. I'm always sitting there in the back. Solar electric fence is something, once I get my garden moved completely, I may end up going to a solar electric fence for next year. We use that for our beehives at our farm up the road, and it does help. So I may end up switching to that. It's another investment I don't really feel like making. Oh, well, the sugar babies are supposed to be small, Regina. So um, they could be ripening as of right now. Just double check that pigtail at the base. And if that pigtail is dried up, that watermelon's done. Okay, I'm with you, Frosty. I'm with you. I'm not a huge tomato fan, but what I've grown this year, I have enjoyed, and we didn't really can any because we've been eating them. So I found I recently went from vegan to eating meat again. So we don't eat. We eat like a lot of like turkey bacon and stuff like that. So I got into eating BLTs, and that's been really good. That's all right, Farmer Marshall. You can lurk all day long. I'm glad you found the channel and you're here with us. Thank you for joining. Yeah, the yellow spot on the bottom is a good one, but that pigtail is a tall tail. When that thing dries up, generally speaking, that's good. But yeah, at the bottom, if it just sits there, that's also a good one. And they say you can thump them and listen. I don't really join in on that one. BLTs are underrated. They really are. A little Dijon mustard on it. I like spicy mustard, so Weston tomato press, 5-spice seasoning, barbecue sauce. Excellent. Good night. I got a tomato out there right now. I don't know what 5-spice season is, but I'm gonna figure it out. Whew, that sounds good. We need to have like a cooking live or something where we talk about how we eat this produce. Shannon's got 2 strands of electric fences for the raccoons, deer, add ticks. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah. The one. So I was out at Warden's farm at his beehives. We were working one day and I got wrapped up in the solar fence. We forgot to cut it off. It lit me up. Okay. I'm going to try that, Stone. And he actually added barbed wire to the bottom, which is very unesthetically pleasing, but it does help. You can go out there and see fur from when stuff gets caught in it. So we got a lot of lurkers and a lot of people admitting they're lurkers today. That's okay. South New Jersey. So South New Jersey is a really good place to grow. I know a lot of people that grow good up there. Y'all gonna make me get a solar fence, and I don't want to spend the money on it. I'm not even trying to lie, but I really do think it's the answer. I've been looking at it. I think once I get everything moved, that's what we're gonna add. So as we go, so first of all, do you guys like doing the lives? It's something I've toyed around a lot with, and I'm kind of thinking about trying to do a weekly live. Um, Anybody want to do interested in that at all? Can I do a poll on this rig so people can the lurkers can comment quietly? How do I do polls? There we go. I got you right here. All right, there you go. So we'll let that run for a minute. Where are we at? In the 2 strands of polyrope. So it's, yeah, it's the control panel that's really the issue. I kind of want to make it look a little bit better than some T-posts, but I'll do what I got to do, man. I got polyrope out there too. Frosty, have you done a lot of canning? Oh, thank you, Dan Lowe. Have I ever used aspirin water? No. So I don't do any of those catchy garden hacks in my garden. I don't do any of them. I don't believe in them. I think that they can cause more issues. So I don't do any of that stuff. Yeah, the thump is an issue. Okay. I like it, Stone. Well, Kathy, I'm glad you don't lurk here. Very informative live that dies if for me. I try to go as DIY as possible. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. There's stuff to be said, people putting Tums in holes and stuff like that. And the problem is there's science behind that, but you're covering a problem that's already existing in your garden. So we need to figure out what that is. Frosty, if you want to get into canning, I definitely would. I recommend it. A lot of people have those glass top stoves. If you have one of those, there's only one canner that I know of, maybe 2, that is will not crack a stove. And that one it's a Presto, I believe, and it's in our list on the Amazon store because it's and I actually, in the videos coming up, they started to break down so you can go to each. You don't have to go to the whole store and search. You can just find like fertilizers, canning stuff like that. I broke it down for everybody. But that's the one that will not hurt your stove, crack your stove. But you should definitely get into canning. I recommend everybody try canning. Well, thank you, Urban Gardening Chronicles. I'm glad you found us. So let's see here on this live what we are on the poll. What we got 100%. Don't know how many of that it is. So there's a poll up there about doing lives. I'm going to give it one more minute if everybody could do it, and then we'll see. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to let you guys, as you're here, you're going to pick the topic. I'm not going to pick it. So I'll talk about what you want to talk about as a whole. So we'll close out by people offering suggestions, and then we'll make a time. And I think I'd start doing them on Wednesdays so it doesn't conflict with the release of the video. And plus, I record podcasts on Tuesdays generally. Thank you, Earth Lady. So, okay, it's 100%. We're going to end it right there for the poll. Now, for next week, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want me to come on here and talk about? It'll be the same format where we start off talking about it and then just open it up for conversation, which I really like the second part. It's a lot easier on me. Earth Lady, were you were lurking too? You just came out of the bushes, didn't you? Heavy clay soil. Yeah, heavy clay soil is something that luckily I don't have to deal with. But the sandy bottom is really a thing, and it's sandy here, so it's the opposite. We have a lot of drainage, so we've got to kind of combat that. And the soil that I use, it's made locally, and the guys are really good about it, but it's got a lot of drainage in it as well. So I try to counteract that, and I use like 50-50. Fall gardening prep. Does say turning beds, building soil. So I can talk about that. We actually right now on the podcast, the Backyard Gardens podcast, that is, we have our weekly episodes come out, but we also have four mini episodes coming out. Two released this week because we had an issue, and we had to kind of catch up. And then for each week, there's another one, and it's all about fall, trying to get people ready for fall. But we can absolutely talk about fall stuff. Building soil. All right. So everybody give a suggestion for another minute, and then I'll put up a poll, and that'll be the decision for next week's live. I like doing it that way because I don't want to come on here and talk about what you don't want to hear. I want to talk about what you want to hear and be involved in and what you're dealing with. So increasing egg production. It's too late for you to grow potatoes this year. Yeah, I would imagine so. I'm doing the poll, so y'all just keep firing them off. It's not letting me do what I want. One other thing, I try to keep it with the topic of the stream. Cover crops. Oh, Emerald Water Life. I'm glad you like your seed starting guide. Has it helped you? And does it make sense to you? So there's, again, if you're new or you didn't hear or whatever, there's a poll going on at the top about the next topic for the live that we'll do next Wednesday. And you guys got to work with me here. I'm trying to figure out this whole live portion, trying to get to where it'll tell people that I'm going live, and then you can click on it and get a reminder, but I'm failing at that. So we'll see. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're finding use of that, and I hope it helps you throughout the season. And just remember that you may have to make adjustments, but you'll be able to see that as you grow. And I think once we learn about the timing of our plantings, we can really progress and make decisions in our gardens better. This is a lifetime journey. It's not something that you go sit down. There's a reason why I don't have a gardening class. If I felt like having a gardening class, like a 10, 20 episode series would get you going, I don't think that that's helpful because it changes every year. I could sit in this chair every year and talk about the same subjects because I'm learning in my garden as well, and things would be changing. The difference is like Kathy, she's been canning for 40 years. Hats off to you. You know, she's very comfortable with it, but she's going to learn something different, but she's going to progress much faster because she's got a lot of experience to it. So she can tweak things, you know, and as we all will do in our gardens, we will all tweak things and work things through each year and improve upon it. And the thing is each one of you, there's 24 people in here right now. Next year, you will be able to follow what you've done. You will build on that knowledge, and you will be able to progress much faster as the years come, so that you will be able to kind of break through the different issues that you've been having. Oh, I'm glad you made time, Danlo. I really do appreciate it. Danlo is one of our top commenters, very loyal, and I do greatly appreciate you being here. Yep. So food preservation is a big one. So where I am, we do eggs, we do bees, we grow food, and we preserve our food. And then we do not raise meat because we hunt for our meat. I've done videos about everything but the hunting aspect and fishing. I've done videos about all that. And when I do them, people don't watch the eggs and chickens and bees. So that's why we don't really talk about them a lot. Like I don't make like egg specific videos, but I'm open to doing stuff like that on lives and whatnot. We can talk about all that stuff as well. I hope you do start it, Frosty. I really do. I hope everybody can get in. And I like that you don't care what we talk about. I hope everybody just tries it. Just give it a shot. You know, it's a different experience, and it teaches you a lot about that crop, because once you do a fall crop, your cool season crops are what you're going to grow the most in the year. And I don't think we realize that. They're the healthiest for us. And you can pack a lot into a garden. Yeah, I got stung on the tip of the nose the other day and it sucked. My nose swelled up. That's why I wasn't on camera for a couple days. Yeah, Earth Lady. Stone, do you have bees? Oh, and just so you guys know, in the poll, I fat fingered it is building soil, not building live. That makes no sense. So, but it looks like we're going to go with getting ready for fall. So we'll do that. But we definitely, again, it's going to be up to you guys. But if you want to, we'll talk about building soil too. I have no problem talking about that. Yeah, we've got 6 hives on our property, and the bees only sting us when either we've just gone into them or we've added bees to the yard. Then it's a couple weeks where they're kind of pissy. Right now is the pollen dearth. So bees are going to be naturally a little bit agitated because it's hot, it's dry, and there's no pollen. So essentially, and there's no nectar. So they're kind of freaking out. They don't really know what to do. All right, everybody. So next Wednesday, I'll put it on my calendar. We will talk about getting ready for fall. And then it's going to be the same thing. So 2:00 next Wednesday, and we'll go from there. 108 to 111 every day. Plants having a hard time. Laura, I am so sorry. I will. I'm trying to figure out how to put the reminder up for people, so just work with me. But basically, what I said, Laura, before I go, is we'll start doing these weekly. I'm gonna try and make it Wednesdays at 2, and each live, you guys will pick the next subject. So I'm not gonna pick it. you pick it. And if there's nobody that picks it, then we'll just come and hang out, and you can watch me drink my water as my throat gets dry from talking a lot. Well, Stone, I hope that's not an issue. And you guys, I'm reading the last of the comments. You're more than welcome, Emerald Water. I'm glad to do it. One thing I did when I first really got into gardening about 15 years ago, I looked at my wife and I said, I want to start a gardening podcast. I want to help people learn how to garden. I had no clue how to do that, so I didn't do it for another, 12 years or something. And I just kind of, my filmmaking and everything just kind of brought me into this, and I'm glad that people are finding use for it and it's helping. And I hope you guys are staying cool. Yeah, Desiree, thank you for coming. And that is the next one. You guys can vote for the next 30 seconds if you want, but it's already locked in for getting ready for fall. So we will talk about that next Wednesday at 2:00. So everybody, poll is over. That's what we will talk about. And Sharon, if you want to see my bees, go to Sandy Bottom Bees and you can see us. We're doing the next couple of videos are all about us harvesting honey, and then we're going to get back into the bees. I've got to go back out there and add a hive box now, so I'm going to try and get that on film. But everybody have a good day. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Use that shade. Use that water. Use that mulch. Do what you can. Keep your plants growing, because we're going to be going in for fall, and it sounds like we're going to go in deep next week. So we'll see you next week, and I'll try to get everything set up right this time. Ahala.